I'd built up an excellent record at 23 fights, 23 wins with 21 knockouts. When I first won the world title, I had successful defences at Mandalay Bay. I was in a training camp fighting about the fight against the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world in Juan Manuel Marquez. And one morning we had a phone call from Brendan. He says, "Don't look at your phone." And he said, "Turn it off and meet me at the gym." And I looked him in the eyes and I said, "Someone's died, hasn't they?" And he said, "Yes, it's your brother." He was Australian leading jockey. He was a week out for the Melbourne Cup. The downward spiral that my life went, so I lost the next 4 fights straight after that.
Yeah.
I got locked up.
Yeah.
My fingerprints were found on some cocaine and I got charged with cocaine trafficking. I was this world champion. I could never fill that void, and I was constantly looking for something to mask the pain and surround myself with people that make me feel more comfortable. I got 2 years jail. I thought, fuck. And it wasn't until I was speaking to a trauma therapist and realising where it was all coming from. For that person that molested me, you fucked my life. I want him to know that.
The I Catch Killers podcast was a fresh start for me, as I left policing behind and started a new life. Over the years, we've laughed together, cried, and shared some powerful moments. Welcome to I Catch Killers. Today, I'm speaking to 2 guests who knew each other when they were younger. Their lives went in separate directions, but a chance meeting years down the track brought them both back together again. They've both experienced the highs and lows in their lives, but they are resilient and strong. They now share a common purpose in life and are trying to make a difference, encouraging boys and men to find purpose in their life and become the best version that they can be. I thought it'd be good to have a chat with both of them and get their take on life. So in the studio today, we have former Olympian and world boxing champion Michael Katsidis, who at his sporting peak was living in America, hanging out with the likes of Denzel Washington, but he has also experienced horrendous lows, a victim of childhood sexual abuse, drug addiction and incarceration. Our other guest, Marty Cornish, grew up in a housing commission area with a heroin-addicted stepfather. He also got caught up in the wrong crowd. He joined the army to find a brotherhood and is now focusing on men's mental health and encouraging men to be the best version of themselves. And today, I'm looking forward to hearing their stories and find out how they're trying to make a difference in this world. Michael Katsidis, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Thank you, Gary.
Well, it's good to have you here. I've been a big fan of your fighting career, so it's great to see you in person.
Yeah, thank you.
You're looking good. You're looking
Thank
healthy.
you. Yeah, healthy. Yes.
Staying fit and strong.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've also got a second guest in the studio today, so it's going to test my skills as a podcaster. Marty Cornish, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Well, it's good to see you too. So, Michael, firstly, I'm going to ask you a hard question, but just describe your life. Tell people who you are.
I suppose the best way to begin this is to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I had a very strong relationship with my brother.
Yep.
My mother and father brought us up very well. Like, they'd take us to all the sporting things, got right behind us and we pushed each other along. We both played soccer.
Yep.
Anyway, so he's got involved in the racing industry, and he left school at grade 9 just to follow that ambition. And he ended up becoming one of Australia's best jockeys, and he was basically he was Australian leading jockey.
Yeah.
And come to the point where we'd push each other in our careers. I'd built up an excellent record at 23 fights, 23 wins with 21 knockouts. One of the most exciting fighters in the world. Fought on all the arenas, England. That's when I first won the world title.
Yep.
Had successful defences at Mandalay Bay. Basically lived in the States for 6 years, and our relationship was really strong. And Starthy, being one of Australia's best riders, he made it to the Melbourne Cup, and he was a week out for the Melbourne Cup, and I was in a training camp fighting about the fight against the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world in Juan Manuel Marquez, and he's the guy that knocked out Manny Pacquiao, fought Floyd Mayweather, an accomplished fighter, and that fight was to make me a household name all over the world. Hadn't been home to Australia since 2006. This is 2010.
Yeah.
And I get a phone. I was in heavy training camp, so my brother's riding in the Melbourne Cup a week later. In 3 weeks, I'm fighting as Juan Manuel Marquez. And one morning, I get a phone call from Brendan. He says, and we're in Thailand training camp, and he says, don't look at your phone. And he said, turn it off and meet me at the gym. And it's really important. I met him at the gym. This is the first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And I knew something was up straight away. And I looked him in the eyes and I said, someone's died, hasn't they? And he said, yes, it's your brother. And where I was at that stage in my preparation, that was a really hard thing to have to deal with, having to lose your brother. And, and then I had a decision to make there and then whether I would continue with that fight or to go back to the funeral and grieve. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but at the time I decided I did what my brother would have wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And, and I thought then, the best thing was to go on and have the fight, which I did.
Yeah.
And just about won that fight as well. So I'm one of the only people to put Juan Manuel Marquez on his bum in the third round of the fight. Yeah. And I was an excellent finisher. I've gone in to finish him after I dropped him. And the one thing that held me back, I could hear the commentators yelling, and he's thinking of his brother, like in my past, like I would never dreamed of even thinking, I would just execute. I'm an excellent finisher. That's what I would do. Anyway, Juan Manuel Marquez recovered, come back and ended up stopping me in round 9 of that fight. And from there onwards, I just lost the next 4 fights straight. Yeah. And it's just on a downward spiral. That's where it started.
It's interesting how life can turn so quickly. Like you're describing your brother at the top of his career, you at the top of your career, and then you get news like that. We'll talk in more detail about that. But then, that was probably the high points in your life, the way your life was going, but you sort of spiraled after that.
Yeah, I suppose, I'd say it was the icing on the cake, so to speak. Yeah. The downward spiral that my life went. So I lost the next 4 fights straight after that. Yeah. At one point, my record was unblemished. I was right on top of my game. But that's when all the drugs and the alcohol started, and I began using that as a recipe to mask my pain.
Yeah, it's a story I've heard a lot here. I saw a lot when I was in the cops. Like, what is it about the drugs? Is it about the high? And invariably, when you strip it down, it's about masking pain that you've experienced in your life. We'll break your life down further, but Marty, about your life.
Yeah, well, I guess, taking it back for the start, my mum, who will hang out at the fight, is my best friend. But she gave birth to me at 16.
Yeah, geez, that's young, isn't it?
Yeah, so, we essentially had a teenager raising a child. Yeah. And, that just, it provided, I guess, she was battling, from the day dot, and my father wasn't really in the picture, even though he went to one of the most wealthy schools in Sydney. And I didn't really meet him for the first time till I was 17. Right. And that provided a void in my stomach. I had an emptiness inside me. And funny enough, I actually met him for the first time around the time I started boxing at the PCYC. Yeah. I first heard of the name Michael Katsidis in Toowoomba. And even through that period when I was growing up, my mum actually went through her own adversity and coming back to the healing ourselves. And that's exactly what was happening in the household. There was a lot of heroin in the house. And as you know, it's one of those drugs I've been told where it really masks the pain. It heals. So my childhood was up until about 12, 13 when I went to live with my grandparents, my grandfather's a veteran. It was quite dysfunctional with, my stuff would be pawned. I was doing odd jobs to make money because I went to a primary school in Neutral Bay. Yeah. So my mum was trying to send me into a good area.
A good area?
Yeah.
You were brought up in Housing Commission, but trying to steer you in a different direction.
Yeah. And the thing was, a lot of these kids lived on the Sydney Harbour, around Cremorne, and I went over to their house. and in their cupboard they've just got like lollies, fucking teddies.
It must be confusing for at your age. Like you see your friends in households like that, and you go home and there's syringes and that laying around the house.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, because I remember one time I was staying at one of these guys, one of the kids from school, and I was so excited. I was like amazed of how much food they had in the cupboard. And they're like, holy shit, like what's going on with this dude? But all of this provide me with a fuel and a deep level of ambition to try and break the cycle, and that's when people go to me, or, how are you so ambitious, or, where does it kind of come from? If it wasn't for this, it wouldn't have fueled me, I don't believe, to try and accomplish something in my life.
You told me in conversations that we had that you joined the army looking for a brotherhood, looking to belong to something. Did that help to a degree?
Yeah, well, I was living in Sydney. I was working in the corporate world, but I was just drinking every weekend. Not just having 6 beers. Would really work hard and play hard, and I really wanted to impose some discipline into my life.
Yeah.
Because I actually applied to get into the army when I was 17.
Right.
And I was knocked back.
Yeah.
Just purely as to, look, mate, go get some life experience. And that was in Toowoomba. And, but I was 23 at the time, and I really wanted to test myself. I really was just in this lull in life where I'm like, I need something. Yeah. I need something to believe in me. I need to find out what I've actually got inside and what I'm capable of. And I also wanted to feel proud of myself, to be able to walk into a room with my shoulders back and say, what, I'm a soldier. Yeah. And I wanted to be able to tell my grandfather, and make him proud as well, a man that I respect. So I was really looking for a lot of things in my life that was missing.
Yeah. Understandable why you'd choose heading to the army. You got out of the army, as I understand it, and when you left, you started a business and you were working successful, but in your own words, you said to me you got caught up in your own ego and success and started to become the party boy again, lost your way.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, as now we're 7 years past that, I look back on it and, people may criticise me for the way that I was, and it wasn't that bad. Fuck, I was just... Because, all of a sudden for 27 years of your life, you've never really done well, and you've aspired. And I worked on the business 4 years, and I was around a lot of successful people. And when I finally started to see a little bit of success, you're like, wow, I finally did it. But a lot of the people don't understand what it was like in those housing commission,
What was driving you?
Yeah.
Look, I think, and we'll talk about Michael's career, and like, success in whether it's business, sport, or whatever you're aspiring to can be a double-edged sword. You can lose your way, lose perspective on things, and forget the important things about being a good person. And I see it time and time again. We've all got it within us, every time. And some of the knockdowns I've had in life, I think they've made me a better person. Because if you don't, you start to believe your own, your own surrounds, and I'm good, I can do this, and we lose our way. Michael, let's get back to you. Or before we do, how did you two meet? Where did you two first meet?
Well, I
connection?
wasn't so aware of when Marty first came into my life, because I was really passionate about what I did with my boxing, and that was my addiction.
Yeah.
And I would take classes and train heaps of kids, and when I was only 15, I'd even train the adults as well.
Yeah.
And Marty was one of those kids that I would look after, and it's just funny how everything in the world just always comes around. Like just so many stories that go on to that. But water finds its own level, and then years later, like I'm at a bottle-o, get some grog, and then Marty's just look like, he was so cool, man. He's just like rolling on the ground, laughing. Oh my God, it's Michael Katsidis, and he's like, he's balling and he's rolling around and he's just laughing, and I can't believe it's you and all this. And his mum was with him, which I couldn't even remember till I caught up with her last night. Yeah. But he told me these stories about how like he would see me with a flock of people around me all the time, or see this guy that would just go into the gym and to be skipping there, and I'd always come in and have black eyes, and I was just there just working away, and he just like looked up at me and saw what I was doing and saw my career progress into the world stage. And then, I mean, what's your take on it?
Is that how you remember it?
No, I've got a completely different story. I've never heard that story before.
Beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, well, it was, so I started boxing at the PCYC, and I remember one time looking over, and there was just this guy with these mad bruises under his eyes, and he's like skipping in the dark, and it just had this real rocky vibe about it, like this. And I was like, oh, that's Michael Katsidis. And then, about a year later, when I turned 18, started going out in Toowoomba, and there was just this entourage of people around, like just this swarm, and because there was obviously about 200,000 people.
Yeah,
you've got an Olympian and someone
he's a big name.
Yeah,
everyone wants a piece of him.
And this was before America, I believe. I think you'd gone over to, so it even got way bigger.
Yeah,
and and the name was just carried weight with it, in that town, and was renowned for being just this tough dude.
Yeah,
and when I ran into him on the Gold Coast at the bottle shop, I said to the bottle shop, "God, what do you know who this is?" And even my mum and everyone's like, "Oh, what's going on with Marty?" Like, it's like, and then I came back home that night, and I didn't catch it. And then I put on some Katsidis, top 5 knockouts, And then every time when we started hanging out, because he's like, "Oh, mate, no dramas," he goes, "Here's my number," and then the next day I get this phone call from a number, and he goes, "Oh, it's Michael." I'm like, "Michael who?" And he goes, "Katsidis." He goes, "Come over for a cup of tea."
Yeah.
I'm like, "A fucking cup of tea." So I drive over to his house, just randomly go to Michael Katsidis' place, and we became mates ever since then, and got to know him a lot better as a mate, and we were talking about doing things together back then, but some things happened, so
it's the world of boxing. I use boxing just as an analogy to pass this message on. I know and Michael will get you to talk about this later on, but when you're a rising star in the boxing world, everyone's coming to you, and everyone wants a piece of it, be associated with it, just get a photo with you, just be part of the excitement of someone in one of the toughest sports in the world on the rise, and let's have a piece of it. You're grown men, businessmen want to be there. Michael, he's a good friend of mine, that type of thing. At an early age, it must be hard to deal with that adulation and keep your ego in check and everything else in check. Yeah,
so even from the age of 15, getting interviewed and doing Win News is our local news station up there, and always in the media. You become it's a common thing to be talking and having this persona, and it just becomes an everyday thing. It's just business. It's just part of your life, and then of course as you go along, you become more successful. It's just business as usual. It just becomes part of the parcel of your life. Yeah.
Okay, and I see with that, and I use boxing, we're talking here, but the same with footballers, even in the music industry, anywhere. You can see how you can go off track when you do that. Now, you reached the dizzy heights of a world boxing champion, but your career is probably not as well known here in Australia as it is in America, because you decided to go over and test yourself against the best of the best.
Yes.
But before we step into that area, Sydney Olympics, you represented the country here. A Sydney boy. Yeah. I was working at the Olympics with the close personal protection and seeing what was going on in the thick of it. Yeah. You guys were treated like gods at that stage. An Olympic athlete, if you were wandering
you
around,
are.
And you got your Australian tracksuit on.
Yeah, so you are. So I come from Toowoomba, and all of a sudden you're this superstar, and doesn't really hit you. You have these dreams and these aspirations. You want to go to the Olympic Games, and then when you actually go to the Olympic Games, you're like in the forefront in front of the world. It's like here, Australia saying, "Here you are. This is our greatest," but and then you put up on this pedestal, and like just to see go to the opening ceremony, and people are like, you can just hear this. So and you always see these little fingers and people trying the cracks in the wall, like trying to get like a vision of us and stuff, and they gave us some kangaroos to throw out to the crowd, and like they'd like swarm all over. Like, are these people like animals? Are these human beings? It's like they're like. I saw it then. It's like they're like crazy, like people. It's like so fun. Anyway, it was a really, really big thing. But Nikki Webster was singing it. I just saw her the other day as a grown woman. Like things have changed. And what was it? Cold Chisel that played at the opening ceremony. But anyway,
the closing ceremony, the Cold Chisel, Midnight Oil.
Yeah, that's right, Midnight Oil. Yeah, it was so big, and there we were, and then so we performed in front of the big screen. I won my first round of the competition against Brazil, and then I lost by 2 points to Kazakhstan in the next fight. And it's sort of like you're like rah rah rah, Michael Katsidis, and you're about to become a household name. And it's like burp, see you later. Yeah. So the psychological side of things. Yeah. Back then they used to like a briefing and like a debriefing where you'd have to talk, and they just have a check-in with you. I have no doubt now the way that we are evolving as humans and in the sport of things that there's a much greater role played on the psychology of people in general. When going to the Olympics and not going to the Olympics and whatever.
The disappointments that you get in
100%,
life, whether it's Olympics or anything that we all aspire to. You two guys have formed a friendship, and we'll talk about your time in prison too.
Yeah.
And but this was you met back at the bottle shop after you'd got out of prison, or just recently out of prison, and you've formed a bit of a bond here, and you want to help men, find a way, be resilient through things that setbacks that everyone gets. What brought you two together on that issue? How did that play out?
Well, we both at one stage. Marty was always, telling me like, "Do you know who you are? Do you know?" Like, and trying to like encourage me to just remember who I am and to hold me in the highest light and get yourself amongst all the good people. And I just wasn't ready yet. Yep. I wasn't ready, and like I'd taken this pathway. It's like to be honest, it's like I've been sleeping for the last 14 years. To be honest, it wasn't until I got locked up. My fingerprints were found on some cocaine, and I got charged with cocaine trafficking. But just basically, I wasn't even living at the house anymore. But the long end of the short is that. My dirty mitts getting on these drugs and things like that, and if I wasn't associating with the people that I was associating, I wouldn't have been in that position to begin with. And it's that void that I had. Like, I was this world champion, I could never fill that void, and I was constantly looking for something to mask the pain and surround myself with people that make me feel more comfortable, which is right down there, and it wasn't up here with the people that I needed to be around. There was no clarity. I didn't have any sense of direction. And it wasn't until it took. I got 2 years jail, and I'm sitting in jail, and I found myself, I had a good long hard think about things, and I thought, fuck, like I'm talking to these guys that I'm in there with, and I could actually relate to them. Yeah. I could actually see there's a lot of trauma in there. There's a lot of people brought up with a lot of sexual abuse.
Just on that, Michael, and I've spoken to you about it, and you said you're comfortable talking about it, but you were a victim of child sexual abuse.
Yes.
And I think in the conversation that we had, you said you didn't tell people, you didn't deal with it then, and it suppressed. Do you want to just talk us through that aspect of your life? Because and you identified it in prison. And I know I've spoken to you too about it, Marty. So many people inside have had situations like that, and that's where the anger comes from. And you see these guys, big, tough, bikey dudes. That what's this anger about? They never want to be a victim again, and a lot of it stems from this child sexual abuse.
That's right, and like they haven't dealt with the trauma associated with that, and then they haven't really been able to find the right support network. There is support out there. There's people that do understand, but it's being able to identify. It's just one thing that leads to the next. You know, like ultimately, like I've gone on that pathway. Like I was always messed up growing up, and then one thing led to another.
Yeah.
I've gone down a bad spiral, and then when my brother died, that was the catalyst, and it just
added to it.
Yeah, added to it, and it's just masking the pain. And I couldn't, and it wasn't until I was speaking to a trauma therapist and realizing where it was all coming from that I could actually identify, and he said to me, he said he could tell straight away. He said, Michael, you have to stop using. You have to stop using. You have to stop drinking. You know, it's just clear as day because they're not going to heal.
Just to put it in context and perspective, how old were you and what happened? Was it someone known to you? Or?
Yeah. So I've just recently found out who it is.
Yep.
And you know, something that would happen regularly. Yep. And I was having a phone conversation with my partner of my brother before he died, and so I don't know. I asked her. I said, "Did something ever happen to Starthy?" And she just started crying on the phone, and she said he told me never to tell anyone about it, and because he was similar to me in a lot of ways, but also just very kept things to himself.
Because there's and this is the manipulative side of predators, which you call them, people that prey on children for their own sexual gratification. They manipulate it till they make it feel like it's something you can't talk about, something that you've done wrong, and you carry that. Is that similar to what happened in your situation?
Yeah, well, I guess so. You know, like I was just really messed up.
Yeah.
You know, like I was just messed up about my ideal about sex and about life and what things are. You know, it took away my innocence.
Yeah.
And you know, and then later on in life, it's taken my brother's life as well. It's like if you have trauma in your life and things that you can't really comprehend or understand anything about them, and that you don't even realize that it's happening to you. But the moment that you find something like a really good drink or a drug that you like, it's like all of a sudden it just masks all that pain and it's taken away, and no one really understands. But no one really understands unless it's a fellow addict what that feeling is like. Just the whole weight of it's like everything's just taken away from all that pain that you suffered, the experience of going through that sexual molestation and the trauma, and then the things as a result that happen after that as well, the trouble that you get yourself into, just being messed up in head, and it's just like a whole massive weight just taken off your shoulders. That feeling is unreal, and and I can't say that I like drinking. I love drinking, but I can't do it anymore because it's not the way for me to deal with things. And these are the things that I related to with other people that were in prison. They had that similar thing, and ultimately, look, this is what happened. My brother, a talented athlete and a freak horse rider, one of the best in Australia, has found drugs, and he loved it, and it killed him. Yeah. So to that person that molested me, you fucked my life. You know, I want him to know that, and soon he's going to know very well. Even if I can see him face to face, but I'll get my opportunity. But the things, like, it's not just that. It's my brother, my mother, my father, and all my family around that as well. That they've all suffered as a result of all this, and it's not right. It's not right, and it's wrong. It's wrong what's happened, and look, these things will get dealt with, and I won't deal with it the way that I used to deal with things and just go and mask it. I'm clear. My life's back now. I have clarity. I have directions. I have direction. I know where I'm going. I know what I want to do. Yeah.
So the person you saw that you looked up to when you walked in there, and there's this tough dude with his black eyes skipping in the corner, looking everything like a scene out of a Rocky movie. You wouldn't for one moment think there's any pain or any weakness. What you're projecting there is this tough guy that can take on the world and don't fuck with me or you're going to pay for it.
Well, they say when you're in a fight, you never show that you're hurting. Yeah, never show your weaknesses. Yeah.
Okay, just just so people understand the heights that you reached in your boxing career. Yep. That the Olympics, and then after the Olympics, you as an amateur, then you went professional, and you wanted to test yourself, and you ended up living in United States, living in some pretty tough areas. Talk us through that experience.
Mate, it was meant to be. Like when I was 7 years old, I watched the Rocky movie, and and Sylvester Stallone, and I said then I planted a seed in my head that I know, laugh, but it's true. I planted a seed in my head that I was going to be the world champion there and then, and I loved Rocky, and so I've landed in LA, and I stayed at the Roosevelt Hotel, and that very night, I've walked outside. They've got a premiere for Rocky 5.
Yeah.
And Sylvester Stallone's out there shaking hands, and I shook his hand.
Yeah.
What an experience. Like, I shook his hand. Years later, I met his brother, Frank Stallone, as well. But I felt like getting a chance to say, hey, did you know my name used to be Rocky? Like, that was my fight name. They called me Rocky. Then they ended up making it Katsidis the Great. But, yeah.
And so, what was it like going in there? Like when I say testing against the world's best, in that day and age, that's where all the top fighters went to the US back in those days, and probably pretty much still now. It's a testing ground.
Yep.
There's some pretty mean, hungry dudes in there.
Yeah.
You're from a little country town in Queensland.
Yeah.
And what makes you think you can take on the people from the mean streets of and the Mexicans, like the Mexicans and the tough dudes from the US?
No fear. It's because fear is a false expectation appearing real. FEAR, and it's that seed had already been planted from a young age. I was always going to do well. Yeah. So that's the same thing with life now. I'm always going to do well. It didn't matter who I was in front of, because I had a clear goal. I focused on that goal. I focused on my opponents who were in front of me. Yeah. So basically with what we're doing and what Marty's helped me unpack with my mind and with the mindset coaching that I'm helping people out with, people want to get some sort of confidence. And it's the seeds that you plant in your mind from a young age, like building that sort of confidence, and it's not something that you can get overnight, but I can tell you how. I can show you how to do it. For example, I've gone from a kid that had been through what I'd been through, and too scared to even throw my right hand when I went in for my first fight. I could only throw my left hand. That's all I could throw. I was just too scared, but until I got hit with a big one, then it really tested myself, and I opened up. I unleashed. I won that fight just on points. And then for my second fight, this is an 11-year-old. I fought against a guy called Nicholas Frawley from Harvey Bay, and he I'd ate too much fish and chips. I weighed in 32.6 kilograms, so I was 600 grams over the 32 kilo limit.
Big tubby.
Big boy, yeah. But I thought a guy who was 35 kilos, which 3.4 kilos, and that it was a lot of weight for that. But he could really fight, and luckily I said to myself, I'm going to throw both hands and I'm going to go flat out, because it was an absolute war. But he handed it to me. I got dished out some real damage, but I loved it. I lost that fight, but I gained so much from it because I put so much into it. And that's right. And then, so that was the learned lesson. So I'd learnt from that, okay, I want this next fight. Not only am I going to throw both hands, I'm going to train better. Prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. I'm going to eat better, so I'm not going to come in over that 32 kilo division. I'm going to run better, and I'm going to make sure that my stamina's up there. I'm going to really give it, so my diet and everything's all in check. And the third fight I had against a guy called Sean McCullough from Quilpie, and fought him at Millmerran, and it was a war because he was a good fighter, and I won the fight, and I just give it absolutely everything, flat out. And after the fight, the crowd has thrown money in the ring. It's called a shower, money shower. And, it's one of them things where, as an 11-year-old kid, to have people throw money in the ring, so happy and pleased with the performance that you put on, that creates growth. And with that growth comes confidence. Yeah. And so that's why I can walk around the world and talk to, I was a former criminal. I can talk to a copper. Like I said to you when I first spoke, I just get nervous talking to coppers. Not anymore. I can look you straight in the eye and I'm happy, I'm clean, I have clarity and I have direction, and I have a good purpose in life. That there, it creates growth, and that's the message that I want to pass on to other people, and for young aspiring, people, young youths, there's a youth crime crisis going on right now. There's all these experiences through boxing is so much like life, and I can pass that message that I've learned on with boxing to people out there.
And I think you're the test to this, Marty. We haven't gone down the path that Michael has, but someone that's walked that path in such a tough field, you got to have some respect for it. That you must have some strength and resilience there. Would you agree? Like the messaging that can come from someone that's walked the path that Michael has?
100%. We've got a guy that's walked out the MGM Grand to a packed stadium. Yeah. There's only a handful of guys in Australia that I believe have done that in boxing. Yeah. And then we've got this ultimate levels of success that only 0.101% will achieve. Then we've got this low of trauma, prism. So there's a lot of experience and life lessons in there that's quite unique.
Yeah.
And we've got someone that's trained at the AIS. He's worked in Colorado at the High Performance Center, with Cubans and done all. So there's a really, I believe, and this is what I said to Michael, because I met him, or when I ran into him again at the bottle shop, that was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, on the start of a bit of the adversity that was coming. Mm. And we were talking about doing some stuff together again, like Michael was saying before.
Yeah.
I said, look, mate, I know who you are. I know what you've accomplished. And I can see your career in that world has come to an end. And it's got to be hard, as we know, for a lot of athletes, when you lose your purpose, for a lot of humans. When you
your identity, basically, isn't it? It's,
like, you've got guys that are doing anything that you say, and, all the lights, and that's all gone one day, where you have a couple losses, and those people, you look around, they're not here anymore. Yeah. That's got to be fucking... Sorry, we let us swear.
Yeah, you can swear.
That's hard. And even a lot NRL players talk about that as well.
Yeah.
People want to get photos with you in the peak of your career, then that all kind of starts to go down.
And I think people, and we're talking a lot about men and women experience the same thing in similar, if not slightly different ways. But I think for men, we all go through stages in life. You want to prove yourself, as whether it's your role model, whether it's trying to prove yourself to your father or whatever. You want to succeed in the army. There's a pecking order, isn't there? And you want to be the best soldier. You want to compete. So the heights that Michael rose to, and you say 0.001%, it probably is that, because people don't get there. That's in the rare, they're the outliers that reach those heights. But it just shows that when it's all stripped back, that we still carry these demons that Michael clearly had. And look, talk about your life over there. You were telling me the story that you've been training in a gym for 6 weeks, and this bloke kept talking to you and all that, and you're sort of fobbing him off. And So tell the story.
So I was preparing to fight against Joel Casameo. So we did we split that camp up into two. I did I think it was about would have been 6 weeks in Thailand. Then we went to finish off the next 6 weeks at in America, and we're training at a gym called the Pound for Pound Gym on La Brea Avenue there in LA. And there's this dark guy there who's always just watched me real keen, and I'll talk to him occasionally, check in and stuff like that. And then one day I'm sitting up against the ropes, and I'm Brandon's doing my hands up, and he's going, so who are you fighting next, kid? And I said, I'm fighting Joel Casameo. He goes, oh, Joel Casameo, huh? I'm going to have to go to that one. I was just sort of looking at him and thinking, I said, mate, do you know, you sound like that Denzel Washington. You sound just like him, hey? Like that. And he goes, funny you should say that. Anyway, when he walks away, Brenda goes, Mick, that fucking is Denzel Washington, you idiot. You've been talking to him for the last 6 weeks. I'm like, oh, okay. So, to have the support of those guys, I never seen him on TV. Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger sitting live in my fights at the MGM Grand. Matty Tripp from Sportsbet, all the way from Australia, in the back room when they're picking the gloves. Which one am I going to fight against Marquez? Matt goes, "G'day, Mick. How you going?" I said, "How'd you fucking get in here? The bloke can get in anywhere." He pulls some strings. He knows some people. He's my mate, Matty Tripp, mate. He's unreal. But it's just the people that were there to support me. Those are the people, the shoulders that I was rubbing with, like Oscar De La Hoya, like Alexis DeJoria, like these people, John Paul DeJoria's daughter, you're like, she's a success. Like, I just connected with so many powerful people and people that create movies, and that's where I belong. Mixing with those people, because I've made it into that world. I'm hanging with those people. Then I've come back to Australia. Mm.
And at that level too, you're getting big purses to sign with Golden Boy. And
I forgot who I was. I come back to Australia, I just forgot completely who I was, and just went into a dark slumber. It's like I've been asleep literally for the last 12 years. Just masking my pain. And I couldn't pick up the phone and have a conversation or ask for help or tell anyone about what I was going through, because I didn't even know how to identify it. I just couldn't see clearly. My clarity was gone.
And look, we're not psychologists, so we're not professionals in this field. But yep. I think we can say, just with life experiences, how many times blokes are like that. Like, you've come back and you're in a dark place, but you're too proud or too stupid or too tough to put your hand up and go, hey, I'm struggling. I was living in the stratosphere up there with movie stars, and everyone wanted a piece of me. Yep. I was a man, and I've lost some fights. Yep. And then I've come back here, and who am I? Oh, you used to fight, didn't you, or whatever. Yep. Marty, you're looking in this field. How helpful do you think it would be if someone in Michael's position then actually put his hand up and said, "Hey, fuck, I need some help"?
Yeah, very helpful. You know, we've got a guy here that, you know, like, there was a guy that came through, spoke to us last week, that's struggling with something similar. You know, we've just we get caught up in that cycle. We're drinking on the weekend, a little bit of addiction here and there. We get out of these bad habits. So when they come to a guy like Michael, they're speaking with a guy that's actually lived that experience. And that's the main thing. Like, even when I talk about mental well-being or mental health, I always talk about a lived experience, you know, through what I've been through and how I've overcome it. And that's Michael's greatest asset. You know, he talks from where he's been in their shoes. Well, it's that lived experience. And the situation you're in, Michael, and I think everyone in different stages of their lives find themselves in that way. I'm here doing podcasts and not out of the crime scene because of what happened to me in the police. I went from my identity was a homicide cop. That's who I was, and that was taken away overnight. And I went through dark periods, but I wasn't going to put my hand up to anyone and say, hey, I'm struggling. And I'd meet with mates, friends, or whatever. How you going? We'd make a joke of it and laugh it off and go, oh yeah, I'm a crook now. Blah blah blah. Do it that way. But a couple of people I respected reached out and said, hey, how are you actually dealing with that? And those calls were so important to me. And those chats were so important because instead of the bravado, I'd go, shit's fine, and I'd go sit at home and go, fuck, what's happened? How did my life turn upside down? So I think it's in a message, if for blokes, it's all right to put your hand up and say you're struggling, and it's a hard thing to do. So
you can embrace it and you can move forward. Or you can sit back where it'll happen and just keep going backwards. Just move forwards.
What was your check when you've had the tough childhood and not the ideal situation? You've joined the army, you've come out. You've got your business up and running, and you're doing a bit of travelling, living the high life, and high-fiving yourself and going, hey, I'm pretty crash hot at what I'm doing here. What was your wake-up call?
It's hard to point it to one specific thing, but there was just this constant, I guess, feeling inside where it's like, you know, you can say that you want this for your life and be ambitious, but if your daily habits and actions aren't in alignment, you're not in congruency. And that's where you get the internal conflict. And that's where you're not really proud of yourself because you're like, well, I'm talking a big game, but my actions aren't aligned. So, like, my process is simple, like, simple but not always easy. But we've got to really work out, well, who do we actually want to be? And when I worked out who that is, what type of person, values, vision, personal philosophy, then we go around, well, what do I need to do each day and who do I need to show up as to be that person? And, you know, I had to cut away the alcohol because I know that was the one thing in my life that would just put everything out in chaos. You know, the bad nutrition, doing stupid shit. And I knew deep down, because I asked myself, like, if I remove, like, what would I need to do to go to that next level in my life? You know, and I'd raced, you know, qualified for the Boston Marathon. I'd done, you know, some pretty cool stuff. And I just knew it was this thing. Because we can't truly, you know, I understand some people have had some very tough upbringings and, you know, it's very hard to heal from a lot of those things. And I just want to be clear, But I had to really heal myself, not even just through the childhood. That wasn't even a really, once I met my dad, that kind of healed things for me. But when I went through, things after leaving the army, and then I was self-medicating with the drinking, but then that just puts me in a more downward spiral. So like Michael was saying, like the answer is really cutting away the vices.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not easy, especially like we live in Australia where the culture is, we went to the boxing last night and everyone's drinking and we weren't, and people like,
Yeah, it's a habit, isn't it? Like if you're playing in football, team sport, you have a victory, let's all get on the drink, and it is a hard way to step away. But I've heard, I drink, and I hear a lot of people that say that. I'm taking on what you've said, and possibly you, Michael. You drink, but you know it becomes a problem. Once it's become a problem and affecting your life, and I know a lot of friends that have said, no, I'm not drinking anymore, and they're going, life's good. Yeah. And then I've got other friends that can drink, but the drink doesn't really become a problem for it. Perhaps it is about the fact that they're not using it to mask the pain. So
that may be the case, but no one ever tells you when they lose on the poker machine, do they?
No.
It's like a bit of an ego spray there. Like, it's like things are already hard enough as it is. Why make it any harder when you can make it so much easier for yourself? It's just like it's a no-brainer, really, when you think about it. Like you can balance it all out, and if you can get by and honestly true to yourself, you can be happy with that decision that you make. That's fine. That's fine. But some people don't. They're just like an addict by nature, and they just have to keep on going like every day. And of course, as you said before, they've got the trauma and the pain that they haven't dealt with.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the gambling addiction. I see a lot of people have come through here, and it's destroyed their lives. They're robbing banks because they want to gamble, or they've gambled too much, stuff like that. Your mindset, Michael. So just to put it in perspective, you've been living the high life, and achieving everything that you believed identified you as being successful in your life over in America. Yeah. 2 world titles.
Yep. 3.
Three. Oh, yeah.
Two WBO, 1 WBU.
Okay.
It's not as big as WBO.
Yeah, well, two WBO. So, again, not many people, no one gets to that level. So you've gone there. Life's looking pretty good. Yeah. You're on the cusp of, $1 million a fight type situation.
Already was,
So you're at that level.
Yeah.
You've potentially set yourself up at life.
Yeah.
I sit back here, you sit back probably, Marty, and look and think, wow, what a great way. Yeah. But you've gone from that level, and then you found yourself back here. Yeah. And what was your mindset when you've come back here? Because this is after your brother's passed away.
When I've come back to Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like hindsight's a wonderful thing. I should never have just moved back. Yeah. But you've got to have the clarity, and I didn't have any clarity because I was constantly masking my pain with drugs and alcohol. Yeah. So I couldn't make any right decisions. Any projects that I wanted, like I'd say, righty, I'm going to sell this property in Australia and buy these properties in America, and I'd never finish it. Yeah. I'd never finish it, and I'd go and gamble, I'd go make some bad decisions or invest in the wrong person, and they do the wrong thing by me. I just made just one constant bad decision after the other, and I was never going to move forward. It was just,
Did you have anyone in your life that was giving you a tap on the shoulder and saying, hey, what are you doing?
Look, I did, but it's like I wasn't prepared to listen. Yeah. I really wasn't. Like you could have said that to me because I had that one little secret that I kept to myself. I was an alcoholic. I was a drug addict. Yeah. And I just couldn't bring myself to just own it. That I had that problem, and the people that I felt most comfortable around were people that were obviously giving me drugs or giving me alcohol. I felt comfortable around them because that was our little secret. Yeah. And the only person I was fooling was myself.
And they're not going to judge you. We've had Tom Carroll on the podcast, the 2 times world surfing champion. Yeah. And he was using drugs, and he felt like he was hiding it. It was his shameful secret because people were looking up to him, and he went through that. We had Matt Mitchum, the Olympic diver, gold medalist diver, and he was using drugs. Yep. You've got a profile, and you're using drugs, there must be some shame that comes with that too, because you feel like
a
false pretender. Here you are being this fit, healthy lifestyle guy,
right.
and then you're back alley.
Yeah, being who you are too, you have like a responsibility.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to associate with the right people and to do the right thing. Like, you already know this. You know, people know this. Like, it's just it's a common. If people look after you, don't be sitting in front of a kid, bloody doing the wrong thing. Because people do see you. Everyone. There's ears everywhere, eyes everywhere. So you have a responsibility to do the right thing and to be seen doing the right thing, because you're an example for the way you should be doing things.
And the people that, like, you had the adulation from the boxing fans and the movie stars and all that when you're at the peak of your game, giving you that attention. I'm sure when your life slipped down into that drug world, they'd be going, hey, this bloke used to be an Olympian. He was a world boxing champion. And that'd validate their existence. So, well, maybe we're not so bad if it's happened to Michael.
And that's part of the experience as well. Like, I've had a lot of people reach out to me back then. And you know, like, when you're on an airplane, the first thing they say is, you know, fix your own respirator before you fix the child's. You know, because if you can't help yourself, you're not going to be able to help anyone else. So here I am today. I've gone through that. I've dealt with adversity. I can share how I've dealt with adversity, and I can help. I can really am in a position where I can actually give someone else the correct kind of guidance. When previously, I've had people reach out to me before in the past, and it's like a codependent triangle. You know, like you just going round and round and round, and I couldn't really be of any assistance to anyone because I couldn't help myself. And I'm sad about this. I've had friends commit suicide, you know, and I think to myself, maybe I could have been there for them. Yeah. Maybe I could have saved them. There's things that I could have done, and you know, like, I don't carry that weight with me now. I just needed help. I needed to help myself. And you know, that's why we're here now. And look, and I will tell you, Marty, like, I'm really fortunate to have you in my corner, because, you know, with all the fights that I had, and I've had that much of a life, and just remembering things, it becomes very difficult with everything that I've been through. And being able to have someone there and to unpack this mindset and the experience that I've gone through, and go, rightio, you've got to do this, jot that down. Okay, you've gone through that. Okay, bang, that relates to resilience, that relates to confidence, that relates to mindset, and it's just all these things, being able to unpack it and then pass it on to other people. Now I'm helping people in the right way, and the right people, the right people that need help, that actually are willing to work out. You know, hold the hand up and say, yep, I need help.
That's why we don't normally get two guests on the podcast, but I like the synergy between you two guys, and speaking to you both individually and collectively, I could see that, that this is, it was a partnership that's meant to have happened.
It's just sort of, we went on our own way and then come together, and the one thing that we have in common is our mindset. We have clarity and our health. That
is when you talk the health, that is the brutality of the boxing game too. You're paying a price. You're getting hit in the head, and you're aware of that. The low point into your drug addiction. When did you realise? When could you, Michael Katsidis, say own to yourself that I'm a drug addict?
I think the moment that parole called me. They're trying to get in contact. There's a warrant out for your arrest. Okay. So I quit that day, April 11, 2022. Yeah. You know, I quit, and I'm sitting in a jail cell. Yeah. And I've got 2 years at least ahead of me, and I'm just thinking, how fucking great is this? Like, because I've got this hunger and desire. Yeah. I always know that I'm always going to come out the other end, no matter what. And, you know, I've got this wristband where it says never give up. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, this is awesome. You know, I'm sitting there because I'm going, you know, I'm going to come through the other end, and I've got a fucking story to tell. So it doesn't matter where you are or what you've done or whatever, you can break through it. And I knew that I was going to come out of this. I was going to come out the other end. I've got a story to tell. And with that, I've my sobriety, of clarity and direction. And I just had gratitude. Like, who are you without gratitude? You've got to be thankful, because there's other people in far worse positions than I'm in. Yeah. You know, that I've been in. There's people that have you know, they're sitting there doing the rest of their lives in there. You know, and even those guys can find solace. Even those guys can find themselves and realise and you know, come to terms with things. So people that are outside in the real world, they can do it. The world is your oyster. There's so many things you can do. Like Russell Manso used to have used to help a lot of people, and like that guy's really inspirational. And you know, like I've only just learned about him since getting out about 6 months ago. But Yeah.
Well, Russell became through this. We reached out to. It was a mutual friend that put us in contact, and we spent a lot of time. And people on the podcast know Russell well, but I remember sitting here and the trauma that he went through as a young guy, and his experience in prison and being sexually abused and all that. It was horrific. And the irony with Russell, he was doing stick-ups when I was in the armed hold-up squad, and a couple of the jobs he was doing, we were looking for it.
Of course.
But we became good friends, and he was a classic example of turning life around. And sadly, when he passed away, and it was I was at his funeral, and it was just a big loss. It hit people hard, because when you see someone like that hits a low and then can dig their way out of it, it's inspirational.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
We when we get back in part 2, I want to talk about what you hope to achieve by what you're doing. I also, and this is just out of my curiosity, and I'm sure you, Marty, I want to speak a lot about your experience in prison. Like, you're going into prison, you're going in as a former world boxing champion. Yeah. Mate, they make movies out of that sort of shit. So I wanted to know what the hell happened when you went in there. And I also, in my conversations with you, Marty, you said that the thing about Michael is that he points out there's no glamour in the prison. And a message that we can all get out. And if I have former bikies or whatever come here, or gangsters, the world looks pretty attractive, but when it's stripped down and when you're locked in a cell, it's not that attractive, and there's no real glamour there, is there? So
look, if there's any young people out there and they're going on a pathway which they know within themselves and they're thinking about going this way or that way, I can tell them, don't go fucking that way. It's a shit life. It's a shit life, and it's nothing to look forward to. There's actually people that are in there that actually find comfort in it, and then just keeping their recidivists, and they keep coming back. I was talking to my psychologist, and she said, and I've got like 160 pages of contacts of people in there, and these are people that are, obviously they're going. A lot of them going through sobriety, and they've changed. They've been forced to not drink or do drugs, and you see a different side of them that they don't have the same things available to them outside, and you see different sides of them. But I've got 160 pages of contacts, and I thought to myself, maybe only 3% would come out the other end, like in realistic. She said, that's not bad, Michael. She said, in actual fact, only 2% aren't recidivists. They don't keep going back. Only 2. So I was pretty accurate with that. And of those 2% of people, there's probably only 2 or 3 that I would keep in contact that I know would truly come out the other end and
come
look
out
greater things.
Turn it around. Well, we'll talk about that in depth in part 2. But it's just reminded me, we had Spanion on the podcast, and I remember him describing when he was in boys' homes, like doing things, getting caught, going to boys' homes. It was exciting because everyone was in there together, and we're going to be the biggest, baddest gangsters that there can be. But he said going to an adult prison really woke him up. He's gone, look at it. This is, it's life losers in here. There's nothing glamorous about being in prison. Like, there could be the excitement in the boys' homes that, we're going to be the baddest of the bad and making a reputation. But when it's all said and done, who wants to be locked in a cell for 18 hours a day? But we'll talk about that in part 2. So we'll take a break now.
Cool. Sweet.
Cheers.